That voice carried across the banquet hall before I even turned around, and every hair on my arm stood up at once. I was standing near the dessert table at the Kingswood Country Club outside Mississauga, holding a glass of Prosecco I'd been nursing for 20 minutes. When I heard it cut through the chatter of 200 people who'd once shared a graduating class and now mostly shared a Facebook group nobody posted in anymore. I would have known that voice anywhere, in a crowded subway platform, in a grocery store lineup, in a dream I didn't want to be having. It hadn't softened with time. If anything, it had gotten smoother the way certain men's voices do when they spend a decade learning how to sound like they're never wrong. Audrey? Audrey Lockhart? I turned, and there he was. Jasper Riley. Except not the Jasper I remembered, the gangly 19-year-old who used to borrow $20 from my wallet and call it a loan he had every intention of forgetting. This Jasper wore a navy suit that fit like it had been tailored on him personally, which it probably had. His watch alone was worth more than the used Honda Civic I'd driven through 3 Ontario winters. He had a tan that didn't come from shoveling driveways, the kind you get from somewhere with actual sun in February. And he had that smile, the one that used to make me feel like I'd won something, the one I now recognized as a tool he kept sharpened for exactly this kind of room. Jasper, I said, and I kept my voice level. I had practiced level the entire drive up from Oakville. He looked at me the way you'd look at a property listing that hadn't sold yet, openly, unhurried, doing the math behind his eyes. Then the smile widened into something with an edge on it. So, he said, tilting his head, still waiting on your knight in shining armor, or did that ship finally sail without you? The 2 people closest to us heard it clean. Priya. No. Not Priya. I'm getting names confused with people I haven't thought about in years. The woman beside me, Mariska Boateng, who I hadn't spoken to since the grad photo lineup, went a little wide-eyed. The man next to her studied his drink with sudden devotion. Jasper just stood there, comfortable inside his own cruelty, waiting for me to do what I always used to do, which was shrink until I took up less space than the problem deserved. Here's the thing about 14 years. A lot happens in 14 years. Most of it, Jasper Riley knew absolutely nothing about. Before I could decide what to say back, I heard sneakers squeak against hardwood. A small voice, bright as a struck bell, cut clean through the noise of the room. "Mom! Daddy's here!" I showed him where the door was. My son, Finn, 4 years old, came barreling across the banquet hall, weaving between legs and centerpieces, his little clip-on bow tie already crooked from the effort. He crashed into my side, grabbed my hand with both of his, and started tugging me toward the entrance, where the double doors were swinging open and letting in the cold November air off Lake Ontario. I looked at Jasper's face in that exact second. I watched the color drain straight out of it. I watched his smirk dissolve into something I had genuinely never seen on him before. Something close to fear. Because standing in the doorway, filling it not with noise, but with the kind of unhurried confidence that doesn't need to ask for the room's attention, was my husband. And Jasper Riley recognized him immediately. Anyone who read the Toronto business pages would have. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this actually started, because the reunion was only the last page of one story. To understand what happened when those doors opened, you need to understand the 14 years it took to get there. I was 18, in my first year at Western, on a partial scholarship for kinesiology, when Jasper and I started dating. He'd been the golden boy of our high school back in Burlington. Captain of the hockey team. The guy every teacher seemed to trust automatically. The kind of charm that made adults forgive things they shouldn't have. My friend Beatrice used to say Jasper collected people the way some guys collect hockey cards, not because he cared about them, but because having them felt good. I didn't listen to Beatrice. I was 18, and certain I understood a side of him no one else got to see. We tried long distance for one semester. He was at Western too, technically, but he rushed a fraternity within the first month, and his calendar filled up with things that didn't include me. The calls got shorter. The text slowed to almost nothing. By December, he was telling me I was too much, that he needed space to figure out who he was becoming. I remember sitting on the floor of my dorm room in Saugeen Maitland Hall, back against the bed frame, phone heavy in my lap, asking myself what I needed to fix so he'd stay. I spent months on that question. The wrong question entirely. The actual breakup came over text, 3 lines, sent at 11:40 on a Tuesday during exam week. I think we want different things. I need to focus on myself right now. Hope you understand. I found out 2 weeks later, through the campus grapevine, that he'd already been seeing a girl from his fraternity's sister sorority for over a month before he bothered sending those 3 sentences. I cried for what felt like a reasonable amount of time, and then I did something that turned out to be one of the better decisions of my life. I threw myself into my degree. I stopped folding myself smaller to fit around someone else's plans. In my 3rd year, a professor named Dr. Marguerite Ossi pulled me aside after a seminar and told me I had one of the sharpest clinical minds she'd seen in 2 decades of teaching, and that I should think seriously about grad school. I almost talked myself out of applying. The same voice in my head that used to whisper too much, too sensitive, too needy. But I applied anyway. I got in. I got a research assistantship that covered most of my tuition. By 26, I had a master's in physiotherapy from the University of Toronto, 2 published case studies, and a job offer from a sports medicine clinic downtown that paid me $68,000 a year to start, which felt, at the time, like winning a small lottery. And then, at a continuing education conference in Vancouver, when I was 28, I met Desmond. I have to describe Desmond properly, because people who know what he does for a living tend to flatten him into a job title, and that's exactly the wrong way to understand him. Yes, by the time I met him, he'd already built something real. Yes, by the time we walked into that banquet hall together as husband and wife, plenty of people in Toronto recognized his name. But the Desmond I fell for in Vancouver was a man who argued with me for 2 hours over terrible hotel coffee about whether load management in athletic recovery was overhyped, who laughed easily and often, who texted me 3 days after we exchanged numbers and said, "This might be too direct, but I haven't stopped thinking about that argument, and I'd like to lose it to you again sometime." Too direct. I had spent years with a man who never said anything directly in his life. Too direct felt like oxygen. We dated 8 months before he told me he was falling for me. He said it on a regular Wednesday evening in my apartment in Liberty Village. The 2 of us doing dishes, no occasion attached to it at all. He handed me a wet pot to dry and said, "I wanted to say it on a normal night. Not some big moment, because I want you to know it isn't about the moment. It's just true, every day, including the boring ones." I nearly dropped the pot. We got married 2 years after that, a small ceremony at a vineyard in Niagara-on-the-Lake, just family and close friends. My maid of honor was Beatrice, who cried through the entire ceremony and kept whispering, "I told you he was just a hockey card." Our reception cost less than some people's engagement rings, and it was the best night of my life up to that point. Finn arrived 18 months later, 7 pounds 9 ounces, born on a Thursday morning in February during one of those Toronto ice storms that shuts the whole city down, with his father's calm eyes and my stubborn streak fully online from the first hour. Desmond sat beside my hospital bed for 14 hours straight, holding my hand, talking about nothing and everything, his childhood in Etobicoke, why hospital corridors all smell exactly the same no matter the hospital, the name we'd finally landed on. I remember thinking, this is what it was supposed to feel like, not the performance of being loved. The actual thing. Life settled into something almost too comfortable to feel careful about. We had a house in Oakville, 4 bedrooms, decent school catchment, a homeowners association that sent us a strongly worded letter every spring about our hedge height, which Desmond found endlessly funny and I found mildly mortifying. Finn started daycare. Desmond traveled for work sometimes, but never in a way that felt like disappearing. I went back to the clinic part-time after maternity leave, and they were more flexible about my hours than I'd ever expected, which I was quietly grateful for every single week. The reunion invitation showed up in my inbox in early October, forwarded from some class of 2010 mailing list I apparently never unsubscribed from. 14-year reunion, Kingswood Country Club, the second Saturday in November, because apparently the planning committee hadn't found the budget for anywhere nicer. I almost deleted it. Desmond was the one who caught me hovering the cursor over the trash icon at the kitchen counter. "You should go," he said, reading over my shoulder. "I haven't talked to most of these people since grad," I said. "Exactly," he said. "Which means you get to walk in as who you actually are now, not who they remember." I looked at him. "Jasper will probably be there." He was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then, even better, no edge in his voice, no performance, just calm, like he already knew something I hadn't fully worked out yet. I RSVP'd yes that same night. I bought a dress, deep emerald, fitted but not trying too hard, the kind of thing that doesn't apologize for existing. I had my hair done that Saturday morning. I looked at myself in the mirror before I left and thought, okay. What I hadn't planned on was Finn begging to come. He was 4 and couldn't possibly have understood what a reunion was, but he'd overheard Desmond and me talking about it for 2 weeks and had developed an unshakable conviction that he was being excluded from something important. He stood in our front hall in his little gray trousers and clip-on bow tie, which he'd put on himself, slightly crooked, and looked up at me with his father's eyes. "I want to see where you went to school, Mom. Please." Desmond was meant to finish a video call and meet us there later, once Finn was dropped at my mother's in Burlington. That was the plan. Plans, I've learned, like to revise themselves at exactly the right moment. I drove to the reunion alone. I walked into that banquet hall alone. I picked up my name tag, took a glass of Prosecco I didn't really want, and found Mariska near the photo wall where someone had pinned up old yearbook pages curling slightly sat the corners. For about 20 minutes, it was honestly fine. Even nice. People had built whole lives. The girl who sat behind me in chemistry now owned a bakery in Burlington's downtown strip. The guy who used to throw paper footballs across homeroom was a paramedic now, and he looked genuinely, thoroughly content about it. And then I heard that voice. "Audrey? Audrey Lockhart?" People have asked me since that night whether I was braced for seeing him. The honest answer is, I thought I was. I thought 14 years and a master's degree and a husband I actually loved and a son who put on bow ties for fun had prepared me for whatever Jasper Riley could throw. I was mostly right. I just hadn't accounted for the specific, rehearsed precision of his cruelty. "Still waiting on your knight in shining armor, or did that ship finally sail without you?" He said it loud enough for everyone nearby to catch, because he'd always needed an audience for his best material. The room thinned around me for a second. Mariska's expression froze mid-sentence. The man beside her got very interested in his drink. And I stood there, not shrinking, just gathering, mouth open on a sentence I hadn't fully decided yet. That was the exact moment I heard the sneakers. Finn came flying across the hardwood, bow tie askew, face lit up like Boxing Day morning, shouting about his dad. I watched Jasper's face shift. Recognition first, then calculation, then something colder. As the doors at the end of the hall swung wide and the November air rolled in, and my husband walked through, I watched the blood actually leave Jasper's face in real time. His jaw went tight. His shoulders did something involuntary. And I thought, there it is. There's the thing you never saw coming, Jasper, because you never bothered paying attention to what you'd already written off. Finn was already tugging my hand toward the door, toward his father, chattering about how Daddy had found parking right at the front, which apparently was a very big deal, and how Daddy had let him press the elevator button in the lobby, an even bigger deal. My 4-year-old, in his crooked bow tie, with absolutely no idea that the man standing 10 feet behind us had just lived through the worst 30 seconds of his week. Desmond came through those doors, scanning the room the way he always does, not searching exactly, more like settling into wherever he happens to be standing. He spotted Finn first and grinned, and then his eyes found mine, and the grin didn't change at all. Warm, easy, real. "Hey," he said when we reached each other. He kissed my cheek, crouched to Finn's level, and straightened the little bow tie with 2 fingers. "Much better," he said, dead serious. Finn beamed like he'd been handed a trophy. I turned back around. Jasper hadn't moved, but everything about him had changed. The practiced ease was gone. The posture that probably worked great at his firm's holiday parties was gone. He looked like a man who'd just done arithmetic in his head and landed on a number he didn't want. Because here's what I hadn't fully thought through when I RSVP'd to this reunion. The reason Jasper's face went the color of drywall when Desmond walked in wasn't only that Desmond was my husband. It was that Desmond Achebe— sorry, that's not right. My husband's name is Desmond Calloway— was the founder of Northbridge Athletic Sciences, the Mississauga-based sports performance company that, 8 months earlier, had been the target of a provincial regulatory complaint that Jasper Riley, now a securities lawyer with a habit of moonlighting as a financial commentator on a Toronto radio station, had personally and publicly pushed. He'd gone on air 3 separate times. He'd called Northbridge's funding model a pattern that should concern every parent paying for their kid's training program, and an embarrassment to the industry. A clip of it had circulated on a sports business podcast that 12,000 people downloaded. The Provincial Review found nothing. Not one irregularity. The final report, 14 pages, used the word exemplary twice. Desmond never said a public word about Jasper's role in stirring it up. He didn't need to. The report said it for him. And now, here was Jasper Riley, standing in the Kingswood Banquet Hall, having just told the founder's wife she'd never found her knight in shining armor, while that founder crouched 6 feet away fixing their 4-year-old's bow tie. Mariska hadn't moved either. I could feel her at my shoulder, the way you feel, weather changing. She'd been a reliable social broadcaster since grade 10. Whatever happened in the next 5 minutes was going to be retold with the speed and accuracy of breaking news. Jasper made the mistake of walking toward us. I don't know what he thought would happen. Maybe he thought he could do what he'd always done, turn on the charm, manage the room, get ahead of the story before it slipped away from him. It had worked his whole life. He extended his hand. "Jasper Riley," he said. "Securities law, downtown. Audrey and I go way back." Desmond looked at the hand for exactly 1 beat, then shook it, brief and professionally courteous, nothing more. "Desmond Calloway," he said. "I know who you are." The way he said it, not sharp, not sarcastic, just level, like a door closing quietly on its own weight. Jasper laughed, the social laugh that buys time. Small world. I was just catching up with Audrey, congratulating her. "On what?" Desmond asked, genuinely curious, no edge at all. "On, well, everything, I suppose. Looks like life's treated her well." "It has," I said. My voice came out steady, clearer than I expected. "Desmond, Jasper was just asking if I'd ever found my knight in shining armor. The room around us had gone quiet in that particular way, not silent. 200 people were still talking somewhere behind us, but the people in earshot had stopped pretending not to listen. Mariska hadn't moved a muscle. The man beside her had given up entirely on his drink. A woman I recognized from AP history class had drifted 3 feet closer over the last 90 seconds. Desmond looked at me, then at Jasper. Then he smiled, and it was a real one, not a performance. "What did you say back?" he asked me. "Finn beat me to it," I said. That man said something to Mommy, and Mommy made a face. Finn announced helpfully from somewhere around hip height. A sound escaped Mariska that she quickly converted into a cough. Desmond looked down at Finn, completely serious. What kind of face? Finn considered this with the gravity of a sworn witness. "The face she makes when somebody says something dumb," he said. There was a beat of crystalline silence. Then the woman from AP history laughed, one sharp involuntary bark, and Mariska gave up on the cough altogether. Even the man with the drink made a noise that started as a laugh and got badly converted into a throat clear halfway through. Jasper's jaw tightened. He was doing the math again behind his eyes. How to salvage this, how to reframe it, how to walk away without being the man who'd just gotten summarized by a 4-year-old in a bow tie. "Well," he said, and some of the polish had gone out of his voice. "Good to see you, Audrey. Glad things worked out." He'd already started the retreat, the small turn of the shoulder, eyes scanning for anywhere else to be. I let him get exactly 2 steps. "Jasper," I said, quiet just for him. He stopped, turned back. "I want to make sure you actually heard what my son just said," I told him. "Not because I need you to feel bad about it. Because I spent about 3 months in my first year dorm room asking myself what I needed to fix about myself so you'd stay. I was 18. I thought that was a real question." I paused. "It wasn't a real question. Took me a while to work that out. Took a master's degree, a husband who tells me he loves me on regular Wednesdays doing dishes, and a kid with apparently excellent instincts. But I figured it out." Jasper said nothing. He had the look of a man who'd walked into a room expecting to be the tallest one in it and just discovered the ceiling was lower than he remembered. "Have a good night," I said. "Congratulations on the call-in segment." He left. Actually left. Not relocated to another corner of the hall, but walked to the coat check, collected his jacket, and was gone inside of 5 minutes. Mariska timed it. She texted me the confirmation later with a little stopwatch emoji. What happened after wasn't dramatic at all, which is the part nobody warns you about. Finn wanted to know if there was food, because the bow tie was itchy and he was hungry. Desmond found a table near the back with little appetizer trays and got Finn a plate of mini quiches, which Finn inspected with deep suspicion before declaring acceptable. Mariska found me, and we sat and actually talked for an hour about her divorce and my clinic work and her bakery dreams and what it feels like to finally know who you are somewhere in your mid-30s. The woman from AP History stopped by our table and said, not quietly at all, "That is the best thing I've seen at a Kingswood event since the DJ played the wrong song for the entire first hour of grad." I thanked her. I meant it. Desmond sat with Finn and let him work through the quiches, watching me from across the room with an expression I know well by now. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter than pride. The look of someone who's exactly where he wants to be and knows it. By 9, Finn was asleep in his car seat before we'd hit the first set of lights on the QEW, still in the crooked bow tie. Desmond drove, and I sat in the passenger seat, and we didn't talk for a few minutes, just listened to the highway, and Finn's small, even breathing in the back. "The face she makes when somebody says something dumb," Desmond said eventually, smiling at the windshield. "He's got your timing," I said. "He's got your instincts." I looked out the window at the billboards lit up along the highway, mattress sales and personal injury law firms, and one for a mortgage broker. No radio call-in lawyers on this stretch of road. I thought about the girl who used to sit on a dorm room floor asking herself what needed fixing. I thought about how certain I'd been at 18 that losing Jasper Riley was a permanent kind of damage, something I'd carry forever. I did carry it, just not the way I thought I would. I carried it the way you carry a scar that healed clean. You can find it if you go looking. You remember exactly what happened there. But it stopped being a wound a long time ago. It just became part of the map of how you got here. Here, specifically, being a car on a dark highway outside Toronto, next to a man who tells me things on ordinary Wednesdays, behind a sleeping 4-year-old in a crooked bow tie who tells the truth about faces without knowing how rare that actually is. 5 months after the reunion, Jasper quietly stopped appearing on the radio segment. No press release, no announcement. His slot just got filled by someone else, and nobody seemed to ask why. I saw it mentioned once in passing on a sports business forum and didn't think about it again for a long time. Finn still asks to wear the bow tie to things: grocery runs, dentist appointments, one memorable trip to Canadian Tire. Desmond bought him 2 more, a gray one and a burgundy one because, he said, a man should have options. Our homeowners association sent another letter this spring about the hedge being 3 inches over the limit. Desmond had it laminated and pinned it to the corkboard in his home office. I still find that mildly stressful. He still finds it hilarious. That particular disagreement is, I've decided, the most honest portrait of a working marriage I know how to give anyone. Some things you don't get over. Some things you just grow past a fence, the way a tree grows past a fence that was once supposed to hold it in place. You get big enough that the fence stops mattering. The fence is still there, you're just not standing inside it anymore. That's the whole story. The boy in the crooked bow tie told the truth. The man in the doorway didn't need to say a word, and the woman who once thought she needed fixing walked out of that banquet hall knowing, with a certainty that didn't need anyone else's confirmation, that she had never been broken at all.